Well, I'm gonna get started. Ken's joining. We got enough for a quorum, so call the September 24th Master Plan Update Committee to meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 18, the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. Town of Chelmsford Master Plan Committee will be conducting a remote public meeting on Thursday, September 24, 2020 at 7 p.m. So first item on the agenda is open session. If there's anybody that wants to speak on open session. So I'm going to speak in open session. How's that? The other night, the selectmen had a meeting, and big topic was sewer capacity and the planning board and what the planning board does, and it rolled into the master plan. And in 2010 master plan, we talked about sewer capacity and sewer issues. It's in there. We'll see it probably tonight, and also that the planning board takes their job seriously, and in the past, they have never zoned for financial gain to the town. We've tried to zone. The planning board never zoned for revenue generation. We've always tried to do what's right for the town. I'm no longer on the board, but I back up every one of those members on that board. I know them personally. I'm serving with them or watching them, and they've never zoned just to generate revenue. So that's my open session comment, and I think that's something that we may have to make a little more clearer in this plan.
George, may I have a follow-up?
Sure.
I was going to mention this at some point during the meeting. I watched that meeting as well. It's always good to hear people talking about planning, zoning, and things of that nature. But I guess what stuck with me, and it's good that, Ken, it's good that you're on the call tonight, is there was conversation about what's the vision for the town, or what's the vision for particular geographic areas in town. I think you specifically mentioned like the center village. What's the vision for the next 5 or 10 years? And then there was some discussion among the manager and board members on that. And the reason I guess I'm bringing this up is that I think that's the purpose of the master plan. It's understandable to me where people may not know about the 2010 master plan or the 2013 Center Village master plan. But if one were to read it, I think the vision is pretty clear. I think the goal of this committee is to further articulate refocus or recalibrate those existing visions. So I thought, I thought it may make sense for Ken to provide some additional insight, because tonight's topics, of all the topics we've discussed in the chapters, these are probably the 2 or 3 chapters that really talk about visions, and if we're going to change visions or recalibrate visions. So it may be a good time, if you don't mind, Ken, kind of elaborating on what you guys were talking about. So that way it may give us a better sense as to how this report can better communicate the visions that the town has.
I do want to just say one thing, that it was not Ken that mentioned that said that about the planning board, and Ken stood up for the planning board. So because he's attended several of our meetings and he's watched us to go through the paces, and they're hard paces. So I do appreciate what Ken did for the members of the planning board. in the sense that he did stand up and say that they do a good job. So I do want to commend Ken for that.
So I think, Evan, what you're asking me though is I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this. And again, I find when I start making comments, people tend to get very defensive, and you probably saw that in our Tuesday night meeting. You know, everybody gets up on their heels and thinks that you're going after them with a purpose or an outcome that you might have in mind. And I don't. For me, I really, that's not what I'm about.
Yeah, I didn't take it that way.
More for me. Yeah, it's more for me about like, well, where are we going and what's the plan? So the point of I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I know where I was going, and I was asking the town manager about, well, where do you see the town, in 5 years from now? And I understand, if a property owner comes forward and has a project in mind, you can't control what the project is as long as, if it's inside the building, if it's inside the zoning and they're doing everything the right way, you get what you get. Private landowners can do whatever they want. But as you know, Evan, I've also sat in meetings that a project comes to town and it's encouraged starting, in town hall versus not encouraged. And I hope I'm not speaking out of school, and I don't want to not get invited to those type of meetings anymore because I'm open about it. But, when Hanover came, we made it a point to go out to the Westford Hanover site and see what they had in mind for the UMass campus. And that clearly, and they were very clear about it. We're going to need a lip if we're going to do this. I mean, they prefer to go that way. And is that a possibility? And they wanted to have an open discussion ahead of time. And that sends a message to them, well, this might be something we're interested in. However, if someone were to bring a medical marijuana option to 129 and, they asked the Board of Selectmen member as chair, what do you want to do? And the chief of police and the Department of Health, and the message is clear, probably not something the town's willing to take on right now. That project probably won't go moving forward because the person who's bringing it to you is hearing what you're saying. And that doesn't even get to the planning board. I mean, this is like incubation stage type stuff. And so the purpose of my question there was, well, what type of projects that come into town are we going to encourage and discourage, 5 years down the road from now? Because, what you encourage now is 2 years out. So, over the next 2 years, 3 years really dictates what the town center is going to look like in 5 years. And so it was more of a question of, well, what projects are we going to encourage or discourage, or where are we going with this? Because clearly I don't think the appetite in the town is for a 5-story apartment building or even a 3-story. We have battles on 3-story apartment buildings, and with the sewer issue and everything else, what else can we, so I was looking for more about what else can we do to the downtown area to encourage shops to open up, more walkability, a downtown area that is thriving with commerce, and people want to go down and on a Saturday morning, grab a newspaper or have a coffee, maybe hit a couple stores that are key in there, get a haircut, do whatever. I think the barber shop in the center was a great addition because they're doing so much business. Now you have people almost loitering around the sidewalk outside of Chelmsford Card and Gifts and Leppy Fix. And I'm sure it's increased the business in the other stores in that area just because, you show up and they tell you there's a 15, 20-minute wait. Then you're looking around like, what can I do for 15 minutes? Where can you walk to grab a coffee? So you go up to the Gulf and hit the Dunkin' Donuts, or, maybe you go into the art place there that, has the coffee shop in the back now. So that was more where I was going with that.
That's a good explanation. That clarifies.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for a jury to go and say, I'm upset about gristmill, or I'm upset about, because I'll go on note to say I'm in 100% support of the Oddfellows building becoming a steakhouse. And, I think gristmill, for all the complaints of the traffic and everything else, that didn't show up. And the people that live there love it. And I know a ton of Chelmsford residents that moved in there and think it's the best move they've made in the last 20 years. And there's a community in there of people that know other Chelmsford residents, and they have Friday night cocktail hours in someone's apartment, or they hang out outside in lawn chairs, and they're loving their life there now. And to me, to put up another one behind the Oddfellows is a fantastic idea. I think it's giving a great opportunity to the residents of this town to downsize their homes and stay amongst people that they've known for 20 years and have a community as they age. So I think it's a great opportunity. So it wasn't, for me, it wasn't a referendum of did we make mistakes and how you answer to this. It was more of a, how do we make this look great? Like West Concord or Lexington Center, or, you know, some of these centers that you drive to and you're like, wow, that was a lot of fun walking around downtown.
I appreciate that clarification. I mean, when I hear vision, I immediately think of master planning. But I think you adequately kind of clarified that, and I think that's the exact question that this committee has talked about at a high level. You know, to reset the table. It's pretty clear to me, and I think the planning board is already moving in this direction, that they're going to recalibrate the overlays to be of a lesser units per acre or a lesser massing and sizing. That appears to be in line with the community sentiments. But then you're left with, if you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to encourage? And I think that's where, you know, tonight's conversation, digging into land use zoning and economic development strategies in lieu of encouraging new construction. Hopefully tonight we can begin to, you know, flesh out some of those more granular concepts and ideas. So I appreciate that. That was good.
Great. I'm glad we had a good conversation there. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Evan. Survey results, we'll just skip over that. Fred's here from Age Friendly. You want to give us a quick update?
Yeah, George, thanks. The age-friendly Chelmsford Action Plan is still being reviewed. It's been reviewed by the domain team leads after the final deliverable we received from UMass Boston. It's been reviewed by the Council on Aging Board. Your committee has it now, and Evan has told me that I should expect comments soon. When I get those comments, I'd like to review them before sending it on to the entire core team. I expect a smooth review by the entire core team because a third of that team is made up of people who have already reviewed it because they're on duplicate groups. So waiting to hear what your committee has to say about it.
Very good.
Fred, just to clarify, my intent was to make comments from me, not from the committee.
Understand.
Okay.
And Fred, I will send you an email. In the transportation section, there's a couple of errors that we found that need to get corrected.
Please, thank you.
Okay.
So the next two items, NEMCOG review land use and zoning section and review economic development section. We also have Lisa Marone with us, who is the economic development director, I believe. Is that your title?
My official title is Director of Business Development, but
Okay.
you know, it's
Kind of one and the same.
Yeah.
So I suppose, how do we want to do this? We want to just go forward, or Lisa, do you want to make a comment first, or and then chime in as we go along?
My suggestion is we start with the land use and zoning.
Okay.
That will prime the pump for economic development.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Okay, so I had provided to you some updates to this chapter. So the first thing I'm going to mention, maybe we come back to this in the end, but we have some goals from the last master plan, and I think there may be some desire to tweak or modify at least a couple of them based on what I see coming out of this master plan. So I'm just going to put that out there, and maybe between now and the next meeting, the committee members can take a little bit of time and look at those goals and see if you have suggestions in terms of changes that might be appropriate.
Yeah, because I had a couple comments in there from previous meetings, so but I'll get that over to you.
Great. So what I've done since the last meeting is taken some input that Evan has provided to me that was based mostly on the recommendations from the last chapter, and then also looked at the survey results. And on page 31, I started basically updating the section on public input. So the master plan survey doesn't specifically talk about land use per se, but there are some things that can be gleaned from the overall survey results. So one of the things is that about half of the residents say that they're in favor of restricting or prohibiting business and commercial development. They feel that this is moderately to extremely important. And then 25% felt that it was not important at all. So on the other hand, 74% of the respondents felt that encouraging more intense economic development, and that should say in instead of is, in strategic locations is moderately to extremely important. And then 85% felt that creating additional opportunities for small scale or neighborhood style business establishments is moderately to extremely important. And then another almost 79% indicated that creating design guidelines for new development was also important. So those were primarily the takeaways from the survey that had an implication in terms of the land use topic. So on the next page under issues and opportunities, I worked from the input that Evan provided to me and some input that you as a committee provided at the last meeting to sort of rework the issues and opportunities section. So the first paragraph talks about the fact that as a community, you've implemented most of the land use recommendations that were in the 2010 plan, which is really something you should be commended for because it's not something that we typically see in most towns. It then points out that while you adopted design guidelines in 2013, the 2010 plan had recommended this advisory review process, which was not established. And as we saw, a majority of the survey respondents felt that creating design guidelines for new development was important. So the suggestion here is that the planning board investigate whether a more formal design review process would benefit the town in the future. So next paragraph talks about the fact that the 2010 master plan recommended that the zoning bylaw be modified to reflect the character that exists in certain neighborhoods, particularly in the Westlands and the area around Hart Pond and Freeman Lake, where development has happened at a much denser rate. And in 2019, you revised a section of the zoning bylaw for pre-existing non-conforming 1 and 2 family structures to basically address setback issues based upon the date that the structure was built. So this significantly reduced the number of special permits that were needed for 1 and 2 family additions, and that the planning board felt that this was an easier and faster process than doing a zoning revision. So the recommendation here is that once you have 2 years of data available, that the planning board should review the impact of the change that they made to determine whether it's adequately addressed the recommendation in the 2010 master plan or if zoning revisions are still needed. The next section talks about the recommendation in 2010 that a mill reuse overlay district and bylaw be created for the mill complexes in North Chelmsford. And initially in 2010, the thought was that this would provide for greater flexibility for reuse or redevelopment of the mills and also protect the historic resources that are there and further the town's economic development and housing goals. So some of this was addressed through the CEIOD, which allows for that flexibility for properties that are located in the commercial zone, but the CEIOD does not apply to the mill that's located in the industrial zone. So the suggestion here is that the town should consider either modifying the CEIOD so that it applies to all mill properties or work toward establishing the mill reuse overlay district and bylaw that was initially recommended. And then the paragraphs beneath that just talk about so what an overlay district is, because my experience is for the overall community, they're not really familiar with that concept. So there's some explanation offered there. On page 33, in the second full paragraph down, this section talks about the recommendation in 2010 to address the zoning conflicts along Route 40, so that there's a transitional zone to reduce conflicts between the residential and commercial industrial uses. It talks about the fact that the Route 40 Study Committee was formed, and you went through this lengthy process, which resulted in some zoning articles that were defeated at fall 2019 meeting. So therefore the issue remains unresolved. And basically it says the planning board will need to revisit this issue in order to determine whether transitional zoning should still be pursued for the area. So it's really, it's just, you know, the planning board needs to decide whether it's worth pursuing this again, or if it is not. The next section really is fairly unchanged from 2010. This talks about the proposed extension of commuter rail from Lowell to Nashua and Manchester, New Hampshire. And if this project goes forward, the town has in the past been interested in perhaps establishing a commuter rail station in North Chelmsford, assuming the traffic can be adequately mitigated. So the recommendation here is that the town should continue to monitor the project and basically to work with New Hampshire DOT, MassDOT, the National Regional Planning Commission, which works a great deal on the project, the LRTA, and NIMCOG, and participate in the design and environmental review. And then should a commuter rail station be established, the town will need to look at zoning in this area to take advantage of state funding opportunities for transit-oriented development. And that is something that we had looked at in the 2010 plan as a way to create some sort of moderate to high density mixed use development within walking and bicycling distance of public transit. And the state has some funding programs for projects that fall under the transit-oriented development category. The next section talks about the sort of future of brick and mortar retail and the market for office space, which is becoming increasingly challenging, and suggests that the town revise its zoning bylaw to accommodate pop-up stores, e-commerce, fulfillment centers, and ghost/dark stores. And then there is a few paragraphs beneath that that describe what pop-up retail is, and that it's, you know, temporary use of a space where people sell all kinds of merchandise. It's usually located in town centers, in empty retail malls, along busy roadways. It's much less expensive than renting traditional store space. And typically merchants are there for 3 months or less. Then there's a description of what e-commerce is. E-commerce companies, particularly now that they are so busy and now that people are doing probably most of their shopping online, they're really now looking at supplementing their network of distribution centers with smaller satellite facilities that reduce the lead time for delivering their goods. And this is really creating a demand for strategically located warehouse space. They typically are looking for these to be very close to transportation facilities. And then it then talks about fulfillment centers, where merchants actually outsource the warehousing and the shipping of their goods through a distribution center. So it's like a warehouse, except that things aren't stored there for a very long time. And unlike a warehouse, there is a third-party logistics vendor who provides the storage, but then also handles all of the customer service and the order fulfillment. And inventory there doesn't usually sit there for more than a month. And then The next section talks about the hardest hit businesses during the pandemic being restaurants and retailers who have been sort of forced to innovate and change their business model by shifting their focus to ghost kitchens and dark stores. In some cases, the ghost kitchens are actually leased by a restaurant or a restaurant subcontractor for just their delivery side of the business, operating through third-party aggregators like DoorDash and Uber Eats and Grubhub, where dark stores are really retail outlets that cater exclusively to online business. So the next section talks about the fact that the town has adopted an inclusionary housing bylaw, and suggests that now that the town's reached its 10% affordable housing goal, we'll need to consider whether the affordability requirement should be reduced to 10 to 15%. And there's a suggestion there that the affordability requirement should be based on a number that allows the town to maintain its 10% goal and takes into consideration any new units that are likely to be added to the town's housing stock through future growth. And I don't know if Chelmsford has any expiring uses, but if there are expiring uses on the horizon, that should be considered as well. And then the next section talks about the in-law apartment regulations that you have, and there are some changes that were made to those to make them more accommodating to today's families. So in our office, I have provided some information that we have some funding from the state to look at accessory dwelling unit bylaws for our communities in the greater Lowell area. And our work with Chelmsford has shown that you approve about just somewhere between 5 and 6 units per year since 2013. In Chelmsford, you restrict the occupancy to people who are related to the homeowner. And unlike most of our communities, you allow these units by right, but the apartments have to be built within the existing walls of a home or an attached garage. So one of the things that is suggested here is that the town revisit the bylaw to determine whether additional changes could be made to allow for freestanding structures. So in some of our communities, they allow these units to be built in a detached barn or a detached garage. And also look at the requirement that occupants be related to the homeowners. That's not the case in every community. And a lot of communities are looking at this a little differently now, and that providing these units to people who aren't related to the homeowner is a good opportunity to provide housing for either someone who is downsizing or to a young person who's entering the workforce and looking for housing that they can afford, at least on a temporary basis. The next section talks about low impact development, in that there was a recommendation in the 2010 master plan. And then there's an explanation of what that is. So there's a suggestion that this be looked at again. It would help the town meet its requirements and EPA's new MS4 permit, which is now in effect. And I'll leave it up to Evan as to whether he wants to keep this here or if he wants to move this to natural and cultural resources. It could go in either section. The 2010 master plan recommended that the town amend its zoning bylaw to address the needs of the agricultural economy and operations in the town as a way of preserving agricultural land and allowing agricultural enterprises to remain economically viable. So your zoning bylaw does allow all types of agriculture in all districts. So there's a suggestion here that other agriculture related activities should be considered within the bylaw, such as allowing farm retail sales in residential districts, allowing farm co-ops, community kitchens, farm to table restaurants, and food processing facilities. So in the work that we've done on master plans in other communities, we've heard a lot from the agricultural community. And one of the things that we've heard from them is that they're really looking for facilities that allow them to add value to their agricultural products. So places where they can take the things that they grow and basically convert them into other things, whether it's canning them and preserving them for things like jams and jellies, or baking goods with them so that they're increasing their profits. So from that, I have put together a list of recommendations, which really reflects what I just talked about, suggesting that there be investigate whether a more formal design review process is needed, reevaluating the changes that you made to section 105.8 for those neighborhoods in the Westlands, Hart Pond, and the Freeman Lake area, and see whether zoning changes will still be needed. Consider modifying the CEOID to apply to all mill properties, or establishing the mill reuse overlay district, monitoring the commuter rail project, and then taking advantage of transportation-oriented development opportunities if the project goes forward. Determine whether the rezoning of Route 40 should be revisited. I'm hearing chuckles.
That's painful.
Yep, that's why you need to think about it hard and long, probably, but it's there for now. And then decide whether the town should revise its zoning bylaw to accommodate the pop-up stores and e-commerce and the ghost and dark stores. And then determine whether the affordability requirement in your inclusionary housing bylaw should be reduced. And then looking again at your in-law apartment regulations to see whether some of those things could be maybe a little less restrictive. And then amend the development regulations to allow for low impact development, which will benefit your compliance with the MS4 permit. And then consider modifying the zoning bylaw to allow for agriculture related activities, which I just listed a couple minutes ago.
So they're good recommendations. There's one that I don't agree with, but on the review of the in-law apartment regulations, we did that several years back on the planning board. We didn't talk about freestanding structures. You know, that's something that it could be looked into. But the part about the requirement occupancy related to the homeowner should be reconsidered. I don't think we talked about that, and we did expand the what type of people. Before it was mother, father, aunt, and uncle, and then we expanded it to nieces, nephews, and, you know, basically bloodline. You know, if you get away from that, then all of a sudden it becomes a two-family or a multiple zoning, multiple family. So I don't know if I would make that as a recommendation. Maybe just leave that part out and just, you know, to review that in our apartment regulation.
Just something food for thought. When we were working on Dunstable's master plan a couple years ago, this was a big topic of conversation. And the reason why Dunstable thought this was worth pursuing is that they have a lot of large colonial homes with people who are living there, have lived there for many decades, and they're having a hard time affording to stay in their house. So the ability to create this in-law apartment, but rent it to a friend or, you know, someone they know, but not necessarily a family member, was a way for them to generate some additional income and be able to stay in their home. So that was the argument there, and the thing that made the town think that was a good idea. So I'm just throwing that out there.
George, can I bounce in, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Bev, we have another bylaw that allows the expansion of pre-1938 construction to be adapted into a two-family with no restrictions on relatives. So I think that addresses exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Those big old houses that, you know, the folks that live in them have been there for 30 or 40 years and they're aging out and don't really need all that space anymore. It provides them an ability to do that split. It also has the advantage that there's somebody else living there. You know, they're not alone anymore. We've actually got a couple of them on my street, including mine, that have used that bylaw.
So that's, I concur with Nancy on that. That does give some of the older big houses an opportunity to expand. But, you know, to review the in-law apartment regulations, whether additional changes should be made for freestanding structures or detached barn or garage. I suppose it'd be worth the planning board looking into. So typically though, usually with an accessory or an in-law apartment, you know, as soon as the folks move out or move on, you typically turn that back into the part of the house, you know. But we did change some of those regulations back several years ago. So I would keep everything, but I would
Delete
strike
the last
that.
sentence.
That's my opinion. Anybody else?
Well, I'd like to just comment quickly that I'm glad to see the reference to the last bullet item to some of the, you know, allowing some of the services that surround the, you know, the small and artisan farmer kinds of things that seem to be popping up quite a lot. But I will say that in terms of the food processing, the zoning isn't the big issue. The big issue is the Board of Health. And they are quite independent. We can't tell them what to do, even the town meeting can't. And they've given every indication that they're not in favor of any kind of small or reduced restriction types of food processing. For example, we have nothing in Chelmsford that would allow somebody to make bread at home and sell it at the local farmers market. You can in Carlisle, you can in Littleton, you can in a lot of towns. You can't do it in Chelmsford. So.
And basically, if you want to do processing, added value processing, you need to rent a kitchen in Lowell. Rent an open kitchen in Lowell, a certified open kitchen, because you cannot do it in Chelmsford, and the Board of Health is not about to permit it. And it really makes a difference to anybody that's growing food products, because it dramatically restricts the value, the sales value on those products. The other thing that I would say about that last one is it's not just about those allowing and supporting those add-on value, but it's also about supporting the use of our open lands for agriculture, because you cannot economically farm. You can't turn a profit if you are farming on land at commercial values. I mean, Chelmsford is basically $2,000 to $3,000 for a building lot. There's no way to be able to farm, to produce food crops at those values. So we have a number of agricultural conservation lands, and I think it should be stressed here that they really do serve a need in the community, and they should be supported. I mean, this is where the local, very fresh foods come from that are not laced with chemicals and have some nutritional value.
So do we want to modify that last section to, you know, we say consider modifying zoning bylaw to allow. What if it's modifying the zoning bylaw and working with the Board of Health to allow agriculture-related activities, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So
that would at least state our vision.
Right.
Well, and make it clear that in order for that vision to go forward, the Board of Health is going to have to get involved and is going to have to buy in.
Yeah.
Or just, I think it should be promote, not allow. I think we really do need an active promotion, or it won't happen.
I think allow is stronger.
You think allow is stronger?
In
Yeah.
some senses, yeah, from a lawyer point of view.
How about allow and promote?
Sure.
Is that a compromise you can live with?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, George.
I like the idea, but I think this issue, it needs to be further articulated up in the body, issues and opportunities, as
Okay.
Mike was suggesting. I think whatever Mike was explaining needs to be articulated. And I think it speaks to an issue that is percolating in town with trying to get back to local food sources and all kinds of the local movement related to housing and transportation and
Yeah.
where your food comes from. And so, that may be a whole new theme. I mean, we've over the years have talked about shop local, but it seems like this is part of a larger trend that again, that's percolating in the community.
Local food.
So you're saying that
exploded.
You can't, what I'm saying is you can't just have a bullet in there that introduces the Board of Health. You need to have some detailed explanation as to what the problem is or what the issue is, put it into context.
Okay.
Rather than it just showing up in a recommendation as a bullet. It's got to be.
That's a good point, Evan.
Very good point.
So I just had a quick punch list of items that kind of are across the board. The first one is over the last couple of years, the planning board has taken your recommendation about the inconsistencies in the zoning map and has looked at it town-wide as projects have come up and neighborhoods have provided input. So I think the recommendation is still valid, but I think the planning board has now realized that there are many, many areas in town where the zoning map related to the use is inconsistent with existing, what's on the ground for a use, is inconsistent with the zoning map. For example, there's entire neighborhoods along Middlesex Street coming out of Lowell that are zoned industrial, but literally on the ground, they're single family and two family. So that's an example. I think the planning board has talked about trying to do a comprehensive zoning map review based upon what's literally on the ground and then figure out what should it be zoned. That is completely different than what Nancy has been working on related to dimensional. And while
right.
I think the recent revisions to pre-existing non-conforming was a first step, I think this master plan should incorporate much of Nancy's research, the biggest message being that 80% of residential lots are undersized. Is that correct?
That's about the right number.
So I think that just should be codified. I'm not suggesting that being pre-existing non-conforming in Chelmsford is a bad thing. There's significant flexibility within the zoning bylaw for being non-conforming, but I just want to distinguish those two. Next one is this notion of granny pods and tiny houses. It's somewhat related to in-law apartments, but not directly. Over the last couple of years, we've had an increased inquiry whether detached in-law apartments are allowed, and obviously we've talked about tonight they're not. Simultaneously, the tiny houses discussion has come up. I think at a minimum, it should be put into the master plan. I'm not suggesting that it should have a recommendation, but I think we should acknowledge the trend because I don't think it's going to go away over the next 10 years. And back to Mike's, even if the zoning allows it, there's still challenges with Board of Health and things of that nature. Dan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and append that with something else that's coming into being is basically an accessory building that is an office building, that isn't a home office. And they're literally starting to sell them, bring them in on trailers. You put them on your own have your foundation built, and they're pre-built, and they come in and it's a man cave, she cave, she shed, whatever you want to call it. But COVID has really pushed people to into the work at home model, and not everybody's house really accommodates the space to do that, as we all know from sitting on Zoom and seeing everybody's houses. So it's really looking like that's a market that's going to boom.
I had four more quick ones. Clarification on the mills and COID. COID is applicable to IA zoning districts for dimensional flexibility, but not for use flexibility. So I just wanted to clarify that. So there are mills in town that are zoned IA, and you would not be able to use the COID overlay for conversion to residential. Next one is the agriculture. I think we need to distinguish whether we are recommending or encouraging this additional flexibility in residential zoning districts or only in existing open space zoned areas. I'm well aware, and I have no doubt that allowing the zoning to have a farm stand in a residential zoning district is likely going to be problematic and not well received. So I just think we need to be cognizant as to what it is that we're saying and not saying. If it's on existing ag land, I'm all for it. I fully understand the challenges. Maybe they're, doing many of those agricultural uses in commercial industrial districts, I think is a fantastic approach. And then obviously on existing ag land. I think we need to be careful in residential zones.
There.
What's that?
Again, looking at the artisanal farmer notion that's grabbing some traction.
Talk like a home farmer?
Right. Well, the home farmer or the farmer
Commercial.
who goes and maybe gets an acre of town land, but we're not going to let these things on town land, or we never have. So where are you going to put it? Where are you going to put the farm stand? You can't put it at the farm because the town doesn't want farm stands on their farms.
So
You're going to have to put it somewhere, and you better put it someplace that doesn't have any rent. Because if you put it someplace that has rent, it isn't going to happen.
So why not just leave it general and then let the planning board, if they decide to move forward with it,
Yeah.
it's a high level idea, then let them get down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're right, George.
Yep. All right, so I just got two more. Building on the new uses, as we were going through this, maker spaces came to mind, incubators, commercial shared kitchens. Again, these are terms that aren't specifically in our zoning bylaw. And I certainly read a lot about it. Again, going back to the whole local movement, there seems to be a tremendous amount of home occupations and entrepreneurs in Chelmsford. Obviously, they're challenged transitioning out of their house into commercial retail space. So, maybe as Ken was saying, earlier, what is the vision for the center, and how do we help nurture existing entrepreneurs in Chelmsford? Maybe the concept of maker spaces and incubators and shared kitchens and shared retail space. Maybe that's something that we can think of. And the final one was just back to the design advisory committee. The planning board has not talked about this. It hasn't really come up. The planning board does pay particular attention to the architectural style. On occasion, they'll reference the design guidelines. My primary concern, and I think it's shared by the planning board, is not to create a separate standalone advisory committee that would bifurcate and or kind of slow the process down. But you have a couple planning board members here who can certainly speak in more detail to that. And that was all I had.
Okay. So I agree with some of those points. I think we can get those things in.
Yeah.
I guess we'll go down the list. Anyone have comments? Nancy, Mike, Ken, Scott?
Well, I think you've got all of mine, but the point that was made that some of the things in that agriculture-related bullet need to be reflected up above
Right.
is a good one, and I'll gladly take a look. And I mean, there's several of us who will take a look and see if we can stick a paragraph in somewhere in a balanced way that that references that. What do you think?
Yeah.
Beverly, do you think you can work with Evan on that? And,
Sure.
okay, because I think we got most of what we think we got. You know,
Yeah.
As far as recommendations, I think it's pretty straightforward.
George, I
Hey,
think
George.
adding
What?
something specific about the maker spaces would be
Yeah.
useful. I think it's a very relevant, timely development, and that we're going to see a lot more of it going forward.
Okay. All right. I got no problem with those. I think they're ideas, and it's something that the planning board could study further as the time goes on. You know, same with the tiny homes that Evan brought up. You know, the accessory type buildings, and man, those little accessory type offices.
Yeah.
You know, so I think those are all ideas that could come to fruition somewhere along the line. So, but you know, I think working those in doesn't hurt anything, and it just brings attention to people. So,
Hey, George.
yes,
The survey input that talked about, you know, more neighborhood kind of opportunities for stores or pop-up meeting consumer requirements at a neighborhood level. Is that something that deals? I mean, it was, you know, Beverly did a good job of capturing that from the survey input. I'm just wondering how could we work that into recommendations and keep within sort of the guidelines that we'd like for the vision of the community.
So that's what I was trying to articulate. This trend in the survey actually makes it really clear. The community wants to get back to its small town feel in the way the town remembered it before it was as busy as it is. So I think the maker spaces and the shared kitchens and how do you get entrepreneurs keyed into the local economy is neighborhoody. I'm not sure that survey response is referring to having commercial conveniences in closer proximity to neighborhoods. I think we have a lot of kind of neighborhood commercial plazas. South Chelmsford comes to mind. Maybe the recommendation here is that those need to be looked at and encouraged or promoted to return to a neighborhood service center, so to speak. But I think there's a couple different issues going on here.
okay.
You know, around that topic, I remember when I was living in Virginia and they were building up so rapidly around there, the model was basically that there was a small town center that offered, you know, a grocery store, a haircut, a barber, a beautician, whatever, just, you know, the vital services. And there was a neighborhood that grew up, that was built up around it. But virtually you could walk. I mean, nothing was, you know, the neighborhood was no more than a mile away from, or maybe half a mile away from its vital services. If you take that concept and look at something like Chelmsford that is I mean, we're at a crossroads. We have a whole lot of highways going through us, state roads. If you consider that those state roads are basically our primary feeder roads, and the communities, the residential communities then feed off of them, it might be worth looking at that limited commercial use on those feeder roads to get more of the intimate services.
Yeah, what
Closer to the
once upon a
neighborhoods.
time was kind of roadside commercial sort of.
Yeah, roadside commercial.
So I just want to get back, I think Scott was talking about the 85% indicate creating additional opportunities for small scale neighborhood style business establishments. So, you know, there's definitely an opportunity there, and maybe it's a recommendation that the planning board look at creating these small scale neighborhood style business establishments or centers. You know, whether they're seasonal or year round.
The best example we have in current zoning is CA. Chelmsford Street is probably the best example that we have. And what's interesting, when you go to Kate's Corner and the plaza down on South Chelmsford near Mill Road, I'm not sure those are zone CA. So, you know, if in fact Chelmsford Street is viewed as neighborhood scale style, small locally owned businesses, you know, maybe considering rezoning those other neighborhood commercial districts to CA may be a good start. Because at least it immediately addresses the scope and scale of the structures. And then you can go into the use table and further refine it.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that anybody that lives in any of those neighborhoods would want the commercial element moving into their neighborhood. And that's just reality.
Yeah, I think zoning creep is off the table.
Yeah.
So that's why I would leave it open-ended and not
Yeah.
be too specific
Yeah.
for further study. You know, I mean, we're high level here, and we got 85% moderate to extremely important. So what does it really mean for someone? Does it mean like someone's got a 10-foot by 3-foot lean-to with some tomatoes and cucumbers and zucchinis that they grew on for 2 acres that they own or something, and they're in a residential neighborhood? They put them out there for someone to purchase, you know, or does it mean having a small convenience store in a neighborhood similar to what's over on across from the Westland School there, the little convenience store type of, you know, store, you know, is that?
Used to be Miller's.
Miller's, exactly, yes. You know, so, you know, that's something to figure out, because that's a residential neighborhood to me. And, but, you know, in their heyday, people used to stop in there and get a cup of coffee and a muffin in the morning, and the place was busy. And
It's fantastic.
Can that business model be profitable today?
They're still open today and making money.
Yeah, you know, usually those are typically owner-occupied businesses.
Yeah.
You know, and the owners work, you know, 50, 60 hours a week, and they have a good quality product, and they're part of the neighborhood. So, you know, you would hope that they're going to be profitable. So,
Just before we leave this, I wonder if that 85%, I know it says creating additional, but when, you know, now that we're talking about it, I mean, you have up in North, you have the convenience store just outside of Vinyl Square, you got Kate's Corner. Almost every neighborhood commercial district, amazingly, Chelmsford still has a lot of locally owned, neighborhood-centric stores and businesses. So I wonder if that 85%, you know, it says additional, but you know, I think we sometimes as a community forget how, you know, just how blessed the town really is with its strong, small commercial neighborhood centers.
Is there something Beverly can do to highlight how many we actually have? Maybe it's an education shortfall as opposed to a reality shortfall.
Yeah, I can work with Beverly on in the land use section, it has kind of a character description. And I can work to kind of beef that up and maybe name some of the more prominent, long-standing establishments. Take a shot at it and, swing it back to the committee.
All right.
What if there were just a broad recommendation that says, examine mechanisms for increasing small-scale neighborhood-style business opportunities in strategic locations?
I think that
Yeah.
would be fine with me.
That
'Cause
works.
that's, and that, the planning board can get in a work session if they feel it's something they want to pursue. They can start doing some research on the ground, at a later date. I mean, it's a high level opportunity. So, I like the way that's worded. Nancy, what do you think?
I like that, yeah.
Mike,
I think it's appropriate.
what do you think?
Yeah,
Scott?
Yeah, I'm okay. I think it's more education now that, Evan's weighed in and Beverly's got some statistics. I think it's just an education process. Part of highlighting, that we're focused on the local.
Right. Ken? You good with that?
No, yeah, I'm good with it. Makes sense.
Bill?
Concur.
Okay. So Evan, will you work with Beverly on that? And
Yep, but we'll circle back with the committee.
okay.
Yep.
Anybody else on this one before we move on to the next? Anybody? Okay. Well, we'll move on. Economic development, I believe, is the next one. Economic development.
Good evening.
And we have Lisa here.
Good
as
evening.
well.
Yes.
Evan, do you want to start or you want them to?
I would do it the same way. I would have Jay go through, set the table, and then
Okay.
and then have Lisa go after Jay, so that people, Jay's setting the table for economic development, so that we're all understanding where we are and where we've been, and then Lisa can give her update. That's what makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jay?
I'll walk you through some of the changes, moving from the technical paper to the economic development section. If you go to page 6, talk about the changes in the unemployment rate. We added May of 2020, so that the unemployment rate skyrocketed to 13.8% in Chelmsford, 16.6% in Greater Lowell Workforce Development Area, and 16.5% in the Commonwealth. And on the next page, we have the figure 2.
Wow.
pretty impressive.
Shows the increase in terms of what's happened as a result of COVID-19. We were, and Lisa was part of this too, we're in the middle of doing our comprehensive economic development strategy for the region. And all of a sudden the numbers went up off the chart. We didn't have any data to show that. And we had developed data over the previous 10 months, and it showed things, like what it was down below. And so we had to find some kind of way to show what the impact of COVID was in the region. And we want to try to do some of that in this economic development section as well, in terms of the impact on Chelmsford. The data you have in here is like a year old, and but there's been an impact on your restaurants. There's been an impact on your hospitality businesses, an impact on a lot of small businesses in Chelmsford, and we developed some preliminary information from about mid-April to the end of May, talking about what the impact was on different communities, and that's some information that we can tie in here as well, so that it's in there. So you're not just looking at the data that was developed a year ago, but you're able to update that and have an overview of what the impact of COVID has been on the town of Chelmsford. So we'll have that in there. The next page, just updated the layoffs that we got through the warn system in terms of different businesses that were impacted through June of 2019. So we just updated that. On page 22 to 23, Evan provided information on your municipal tax system, about moving over to a split rate, adopting a split rate, talking about the tax classification study committee, their job, and the movement that the board took in terms of adopting that rate, adopting a split rate. And the next section is page 29. We still need some information on the East Chelmsford Water District. There's a lot of that information there is from 2006. So if you're you're in the East Chelmsford Water District and you have information on water usage or your fees or whatever else, let us know. We'll build that in there. Go to page 36. I've been trying to get some commercial industrial permit information. We've had some trouble. Some of the information we have doesn't say what was done. We got a printout from 2019 and it talks about what the estimated valuation was, but it doesn't say what was done, whether something was built or other types of things. We have other information that we got that has commercial industrial permits for residential uses. And I'd sent Evan an email just asking for clarification on that. But I'm sure we can take a look at this and get the right information in there. I mean, the purpose of this is to show what commercial industrial activity is in the community. And we want to talk about new things going on, not just electrical work or other types of minor rehabs on properties. So we'll update that. On page 37, we will put some information in there, talk about the public input from the Master Plan Survey and the Chelmsford Business Survey, which we did 2 years ago with the Economic Development Commission. So we got some good information on that process, and that was a good project for NIMCOG and the Economic Development Commission to work on. We also worked on updating their permitting guide that will be referenced later, so that the difference about the permitting guide in Chelmsford is that it gives different types of examples of the different types of routes that different businesses have to go through, whether they're a restaurant or commercial business or other types of business. Go to page 39 to 40. We haven't provided some information in terms of what has happened within the Center Village. And it talks about the Oldfellows building. It gives an update. One of the things, it's good to have this history in terms of knowing what has happened and from the 2010 master plan. But I think we want to try to get some kind of information in there of what we see moving forward in terms of Center Village and in terms of these 7 areas that we've highlighted before. So I think it provides an excellent update of what has happened and the activity then there, and it builds off of the master plan. Then we go to the Route 129 Technology Corridor. The Economic Development Commission has been very involved. And we talked about the study that was done for the area to provide a blueprint. If you go to the next page, Justin. Talking about the Chelmsford Crossroads Route 129 study, which I believe has become somewhat of a blueprint for the Economic Development Commission in terms of moving forward on that. It's also been the impetus for a lot of the activities gone on in terms of many grant applications, in terms of the housing choice infrastructure grant that was received, other types of activities that you've undertaken. So then we have Drumhill Technology Drive, and it provides an update. We have updated pictometry pictures, so we won't have to rely on 2008. So we'll put those in there from 2020, the pictometry pictures, just to get an idea of what the area looks like now. We talked about the activities related to UMass Lowell West Campus, and in terms of the other properties in the area. There's some old language there from the 2010 master plan, which we may want to modify a bit because a lot of the stuff that was in the master plan came from your economic development plan from 2008. Summary on Vinyl Square. NIMCOG worked with the town and with the committee in Vinyl Square, did a master plan for the area, and kind of outlines some of the activities that have taken place there. You have Route 40, Route 3, Route 40 interchange. Kind of summarize that activities. A lot of these comments are from Evan in terms of an update. What's going on there. Route 110 Littleton Road talks about the activities undergoing there, the activities of the Chelmsford Housing Authority with some Chapter 40B developments. There's a lot of activity happening there. But I guess next step is trying to outline what we want to see, further in that area. Go to the next one. The Route 3, 110 shopping district, talking about the development of Stop and Shop where the movie theaters used to be. Talking about Katrina Road project, which is designated as priority development site, the interagency permitting board, and what it's being used for now. And these are listing of potential redevelopment sites. We still have to go over these with Evan, make sure that they're all part of what's still left and what we're doing. And we'll, like we did in the 2010 master plan, we'll have a map showing where those sites are located. So issues and opportunities section. A lot of stuff has happened. The Chelmsford Economic Development Commission has gotten much more active and has had a greater impact on the activities in the community. You keep
Jay?
going. Justin, yes.
Jay, I want to go back to page 23, 24.
Yeah.
You skipped over that, and I think it's very important
Oh,
to
the sewage.
discuss.
The sewage.
Yes,
Yes.
you flushed right by it.
How could I forget that?
So in the last couple of weeks, it's really come to light, maybe a month or so, it's come to light that we have a little bit, we possibly have a sewer capacity issue.
Yes.
And that we need to address. And there's some legislation coming before town meeting. And so I think we should just quickly discuss that. Because I think that might have an effect on some of the issues and opportunities and recommendations we have further down. So you want to go over a little bit, or Evan, you want to go over it? Or?
So I believe what's in red is basically a status report or a brief history as to where we've been and where we are related to wastewater. It should mention fall 2020 town meeting article.
Yes,
It does.
A little bit
It's
more.
on page 25.
Okay, so, and it should talk about a $150,000 study. There it is right there.
Yep.
Okay, so that brings us up to date as we're speaking.
Okay.
You know, obviously I didn't include anything related to recommendations. I think when we get to that as a committee, we can talk about it. I think the conversation inside town hall has been fairly limited because I believe the strategy is wait for the phase 1 study to be completed, which my understanding is that it's essentially a menu of options, short, intermediate, and long-term, local, regional options. And while I can, and I have articulated some of my preferences or opinions, so to speak, I think it's quite clear that there are a variety of different opinions as to how the town should proceed. The biggest challenge is that the discussion is not financially constrained, partially because we don't really have good numbers, which is again another reason for the study to be done. What I will say is that I would not view, I don't take the position, and I would not advocate that the town take the position that wastewater in and of itself becomes a limiting factor on economic development. And what I mean by that is, if the town wants to continue approving large-scale multifamily, then wastewater treatment plants will treat the wastewater. If the town wants to build large office buildings and industrial plants, same deal. So if the town chooses not to build a plant at Southwell and allows and encourages on-site septic and treatment plants, and just like many other towns in Massachusetts, economic development and housing will continue. If the town wants to use it as a limiting factor, obviously they can, but science-based and market-based, it has not been a limiting factor in other communities.
Okay. All right. I just felt it was important to make sure I pointed that out.
Yeah, so I think I appropriately summarized, at least for this update, where we are. But certainly, members should take a look at it, and if it's not clear, or if the members have questions, then clearly we need to clarify and revise it so that it's accurate.
Okay. All right. So back down to the issues and opportunities section.
So the issues and opportunities section has not been modified. We have this updates from Evan, what has happened. So this point about the Economic Development Commission has served a critical role in advancing the 2010 master plan recommendations, particularly regarding rezoning efforts, particularly in the Route 129 area. And then talking about some other issues there about modifying what has happened. Question about whether or not the need for a site finder database. You know, Evan didn't know if it was the results were worth the effort on that. So we have different parts here where Evan provides the updates, and based on what's in there, we'll modify that language. The expedite permitting process, the town of Chelmsford has taken that very seriously. We worked with them 2 years ago to update their permitting guide, and they've been one of the more aggressive communities in this area in terms of trying to work with investors and developers in terms of so that they understand what the process is, and so that it's a more efficient process than what it has been in the past. Well, the economic development incentive program has changed. It's at one point we talked about getting another part of Chelmsford in this. That's no longer anything that we have to do, so we can pull this paragraph out. Right now it's more of a wide open process, and they don't use economic target areas as much anymore than they did. Talking about the mill reuse overlay district that we talked about before. Evan acknowledged no specific action has been taken on that. And then, so we have to, on the tax rate, changing the tax rate, we have to incorporate some of the information from the narrative that's already in there about the change in the tax rate, include that in the issues and opportunities. In terms of focusing on the businesses, manufacturing, I'm not really sure what has happened in Chelmsford in terms of focusing specifically on manufacturing, but we get that feedback. We can update that. Next paragraph talks about infrastructure, and we'll have to modify that, particularly given the sewer situation, capacity issues. Talk about Chelmsford is very active in applying for Past Works grant and other grants. Hasn't really done anything on diffs, and I'm not really sure what the status of the improvements are to Vinyl Square in terms of the recommendations that are in there. So maybe we could get more information on that and build that in there in terms of moving forward. About working with the different types of businesses. We did work with the Economic Development Commission to develop a Chelmsford business survey, which provided a lot of information from the perspective of workers and from management in the different businesses. I think that's been useful. This paragraph talks about it should really talk about the master plan, focusing on these areas, and it just summarizes some of the areas, some of the activities that can be undertaken in those areas. Center Village, Chelmsford Street area. Well, that's completed, and it's the ongoing, and would be modifying that to basically tie in with the narrative that was presented before. Route 129 Technology Corporation corridor. I'm sure that Lisa can help out with a lot of these issues in terms of going forward, and how we're able to build on that. There's a question about whether it's going to be the next Route 128 or whether it's going to be a significant development area in the Merrimack Valley. I think it's more likely to be that than it is to be a Route 128. Talk about the availability of TIF agreements. That's been a tactic that's been used in order to encourage investment in the area. Again, we will modify that language based on the changes in the EDIP. The Lowell West Campus has been completed. The final square area will summarize what's been going on there and what the next steps are. And Route 40, talking about the conservation, the Oak Hill Road, which dominated a lot of the conversation back when we did the 2010 master plan, is now Conservation Commission land. At one time was thought to be headed for affordable housing. The other areas, Route 110 Littleton Road, Route 110 Route 3 shopping area. So those areas will be updated based on the other information. So we talk about the potential development sites there and the map. The recommendations, having noted, Lisa was hired in 2017 as Director of Business Development. And then talk about some of the Chelmsford brand strategy. They're talking at one time about a brand strategy for Route 3, the Route 3 communities, the Middlesex 3 communities, and want brand strategy for Route 129 corridor, but we don't know how that ties into the Route 3 branding initiative, if in fact it does, or if it's separate from that. Expedited permitting, we're documenting there the fact that the permanent streamlining guide has been completed. It offers more opportunities for businesses to learn about the permitting process before they set foot in town hall. The EDIP program, we can take that out because it doesn't apply any longer. Again, we haven't provided the update on what has happened in the 129 corridor and the different areas. So then you had talked about study classification every 3 years. I don't know if it's intent to do that again in 3 years, but they did have the commission report, and the select board decided to split the tax rate in 2018. There's ongoing work with the Greater Lowell Workforce Investment Board, and they're also looking at other activities that are going on. On the sewer system, we'll update that based on the information that's in there. If you have specific recommendations and moving forward, I mean, part of that will be on what you get from your study what the options are. I think the sewer capacity issue affects the whole region, not just the town of Chelmsford. Right now, it's the town of Chelmsford that's facing the issue, but ultimately it'll be the whole region. And then talks about working with different groups, and some of those initiatives are still workable in terms of bids and diffs and community development action grants. That's the last one there is talking about working with different business groups, and then go again down to the center village and Route 129 technical corridor. Haven't talked about the sidewalk streetscape improvement projects that have taken place, and think about the auction of the West Campus property, and talked about the redevelopment initiatives that have taken place in the Drum Hill area. The Signage commuter rail service, Evan calls this a slow train to nowhere. But
Gotta slip that in there. See if anyone's paying attention, that's
that's
all.
an editorial comment. I think at it. And then it talks about the Route 3, Route 40 interchange area. And again, it talks about the development district, Route 110 from the western side, Front Road to Chamberlain Road, and haven't indicated that that was completed. So the next page. Talks about the activities going on in Chelmsford Street, Route 110, Route 3, and update that based on the narrative that we had in the description of the different areas, and then just the priority economic development sites for the Chelmsford Economic Development Commission. So that's it. We have to rework those issues and opportunities recommendations based on the information that we received in the other sections.
Lisa, thank you for being patient. Maybe you can shed some light on what you see as issues and opportunities and recommendations that can help us look towards the next 5 and 10 years down the road.
So I just, want to comment, this is an excellent, assembly of very useful information. And honestly, a lot of it touches on the comments that I had already wanted to mention tonight. A lot of, 80% of our business base is small business, and it's really important to be able to embrace that. And, small businesses have more difficulty finding support, and a lot of what they need comes from the municipality. I am feeding them information, particularly during COVID. They are so overwhelmed. I spend a lot of time in one-on-one conversations. So trying to create the municipality as a resource for support to small business, and mostly just facilitate information where they can find help to help themselves. So hearing the discussion in the comments regarding the creative economy, the agricultural interest, I had since COVID arrived in March or so, I had about 7 new incoming interests relating to food. And it was a real challenge to accommodate. We don't have a commissary kitchen to rent, to use for food prep, either for catering businesses we're trying to start. I mean, there was a lot of interest in fresh food, locally prepared food, locally grown food, but really limited areas on how to prepare and manage and process the food. So we lost opportunities in that regard, and they're still looking. They're not giving up on Chelmsford. I think the impression and the word on the street, if you will, is that, you know, Chelmsford's reaction and support system for small business is stronger than other communities. They get a immediate response of what they will need for permitting, for you know, accommodations. So we are really known as business friendly in those terms. But embracing that small business economy is very important. And I think in some terms, it would be great to create a business resource group where to find, where, you know, SCORE. I'm not sure if you're familiar with SCORE. It's a free resource of retired professionals that offer advice for new small business startups. The Small Business Center, the entrepreneurship, the community teamwork. There are numerous resources, free and low cost, available in the area that most small businesses don't know are there. So it would be great to create some type of business resource team or resource group. And that can happen for small business and the larger businesses, particularly on 129. Our response has been in a team effort to bring in Middlesex Community College, UMass Lowell, the Middlesex 3 Coalition, the Career Center, the Chamber of Commerce. Here is the group in the area that's ready to support your business in Chelmsford, and I facilitate that. So it helps to build that working relationship. Would be great to just be known, for Chelmsford to be known in the 129 area as a high technology area, perhaps a sciences cluster. We are working with 3 or 4 life science companies now that are very significant in the industry, and I don't think that we're doing a great job in announcing that and promoting that. All they see is empty space on 129, and what I see is a lot of opportunity. So in these conversations, it's been, really, we had a lot of things coming forward before COVID, and not everything derailed. Some things are moving forward, but I think it's important that we continue with that balance of focusing on 129 I'm proposing with the sciences cluster, or a focus in advanced technology. In the same measure, embracing small businesses that need more guidance. Small businesses need more attention and hand holding, and they're not always provided that service by a municipality. So I think it's important to include that in the next 5 to 6 years. I think it sets the interest for people that want to live in a community that cares about the small economy and the small businesses. It's what sets the experience different of spending time in the community that you live in by patroning the small businesses. And perhaps introduce through my role an annual small business seminar. We haven't done anything like that. It's been talked about, and things like that create your, it implies your business friendliness when your municipality is taking measures to host those types of things. I think it's public knowledge, and everybody has heard that Press Cafe is coming. I think that's going to set a progression on 129 and an interest for business attraction to, look at that empty space more closely. We've been talking with a lot of construction firms that are watching Chelmsford closely. They're waiting for opportunities to do projects out there. I think COVID had set it back a little bit, but the next 5 to 6 years are really going to be, in my view, and what I've been seeing in conversations, it's going to be pretty exciting. I just see so much potential happening on all levels. And as I'm saying, with small business, medium business, large business, I think the town's really known for the zoning changes that have happened, have really set us forward, far advanced from some of the other communities that are still trying to get organized in that fashion. And they're now looking to Chelmsford to see, maybe we could get a site readiness grant. Maybe we could work on business amenities. The overlay districts have been really pivotal. So that's a little bit of high level thoughts of what I've had, but a lot of you have already discussed these ideas. I'm still learning about Chelmsford. As you know, I arrived in 2017, so I'm still learning a little bit. My background from Leominster, they're known as manufacturing. Paper, Fitchburg is known for paper. Gardner's known for building chairs and furniture. What does Chelmsford want to be known as an industry leader and in attracting high level, good paying jobs, creating a lot of stable economy through our major employers. I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, I realize that. And, we've been doing a lot of outreach with our largest employers. They are very interested to stay engaged with the municipality and work with us in creating that branding, the identity, the destination that businesses want to be located in the corridor that has other high level occupants and tenants. So the future outlook looks really great, even though we're in COVID right now. The conversations are still really energized, and they're very happy with everything the town's been doing. And I think a lot of people are watching, every move we make, because we're kind of setting the precedent in some of these measures, and such is the conversation you've been having this evening.
Great.
George, can I mention one other thing?
Sure, go ahead, Jay.
We're waiting for funds from the Economic Development Administration to do economic recovery and resiliency plan for the region. And obviously a component of that would be working with Chelmsford to find out what it is that we could be doing in terms of supporting businesses that were adversely impacted by COVID. So that will probably should be part of this economic development chapter in terms of some reference to that, in terms of moving ahead and trying to get back on track to where we were back in February.
Mm-hmm. You may have been hearing too in some of the news media that businesses are now looking to get out of that high concentration of the Boston area where their workforce is relying on public transportation. So we're hearing at some of our buildings, when I was first hired, we had about 1.5 million square feet empty of existing space. And we were hovering around 850,000 square feet empty, almost a little bit cut in half in that time. And we had major projects coming forward. We had at least 3 major projects that were, working their way through the system. So I feel that the branding and the identity of the Crossroads can really go far in ways of creating more business attraction and things like that post-COVID.
Great. So I have a question. In your discussions in the last, or what you've observed in the last 3 or 4 months, you hear that businesses are now telling people you're going to be working from home indefinitely, maybe permanently. And then I hear some companies say, no, we need people to come back into the office for that team building. And so I hear things like, well, we're going to bring everybody back, but we're going to spread them out. So they might need more square feet. And then, they're going to have some work from home and some work in the office, and they might need a little bit less square feet. Have you heard anything from any of these businesses on what they intend on doing or how they plan to approach this?
So, mostly my thought is that because our real estate is a little more affordable than the Boston area, they're looking to move out here, take more space to spread out their workforce, not necessarily an expansion of their, their business practice, but more of a square footage expansion for maybe similar pricing for what they're paying in the Boston suburbs. So, I'm trying to stay closely in tune with the realtors and the brokers and the property owners. And this is what they're hearing. I'm not sure how much is happening out there. But Triton Systems fitting up their space right now at 330 Bill Ricker Road. Evan and I were there this morning on a site walk through the construction site. And they were even mentioning, they've hired 70 engineers in the last 2 years in anticipation of their expansion when they're moving from 200 Turnpike Road into 330 Bill Ricker Road. They're already wondering if they're going to be out of space by the time they move in. Their target time to move in is near the end of this year, early next year. And they were actually, kind of commenting that they're going to be maxed out by the time they move in there. So I feel, life science can't be done remotely. You can't work from home in a life science company or a robotics company or a high-tech, engineering, which it seems is what we've been attracting. Thermo Fisher has quoted to me that they're spending between $40 and $60 million in that one building on 220 Mill Road. And that's extraordinary. And they purchased the building as well. So when you think about the amount of empty square footage we have, it's all clustered in 5 buildings.
Yeah.
In the large spaces. So we got a couple more Thermo Fishers and
Yeah, you got them full.
right.
So there may be, I hate to say this, with the COVID, there may be opportunities that we didn't see coming.
Specifically with life science trying to get out of Boston.
Yeah.
And they've got leases they got to ride out, things like that. But I suspect in the next foreseeable, 5 years or so, what they like about our buildings is that they can put on small additions and still have enough of the parking for workforce. And, they still have the variety of housing options for market rate housing or executive housing, and ease of the commuting, where we've got the off ramp for Route 129 right into the district. So
Yeah.
I think soon you'll be seeing some signage go up, a master sign letting people know that they're arriving into a business area. And I think that'll help. That's step one, creating that identity for high-end clients that are coming in, workforce, visitors, travelers, property owners, all of that. So we're working on that right now. But I think, I'm very excited about what the next 5 years looks like.
Good. Anyone else with any questions? Ken? Ken's good. Nancy?
I'm good.
Scott?
Good. I'm
Bill?
good.
Bill, you okay?
I do have one question, if you don't mind, George.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, great. So Lisa,
Yep.
what is there? There's a seeming, so based on what we heard earlier today about the results of the survey and the desire of Chelmsford residents to keep sort of the small town ambiance of the town, is there a seeming paradox between their desire to do that and their desire to attract new business and grow and expand and become something different? And I'm the new guy, right? So I'm kind of looking at it without any prejudices. It seems to me that they want things that at first glance might be diametrically opposed, but I don't think they are. But as the business development person, does that concern you that the residents seem to want to keep a sleepy little town?
Mm-hmm. Well, when you think about it in that respect, you know, this is existing space that's pretty much all in one major area of town. If you drive through Center Village or Vinyl Square, you would have no idea that there's a UPS hub out there that employs close to 3,000 people. Or Zoll Medical has, you know, over 2,000 people. So, and that's all in the 129 corridor. And I think it can be a healthy balance where our major industry cluster is concentrated in one area of town that has easy highway access. But when you're, you know, when you're out and enjoying your town, when you're on the rail trail, when you're at the CCA or you're at Vinyl Square, you're able to experience that uniqueness about your community where you have that maker space, or you have that, you know, sewing machine store. I brought my vacuum down there to get repaired a few times to our vacuum shop. So, you know, you want to be in that town that doesn't feel all commercialized, like, you know, strip malls and signage everywhere. You want to be able to, you know, have that entrepreneur feel that creates that unique experience of spending your hard-earned money in a locally owned shop or a small restaurant, those types of things. And Chelmsford, I feel, has a good balance of that right now. But as we see the effects of COVID, there's a lot more entrepreneurialism that's going to come forward, I think. And it's been difficult to accommodate that, but they're still looking. They're all still looking for that opportunity to open their dream store and pursue their dream, and that's kind of what makes the community feel like a place you want to, you know, live and stay.
So you think that that we have enough ballast? Let me call it ballast. We have enough ballast of space that we can grow with new businesses without building more buildings or taking up space to build. Like, we could tear a building down and build another one up, but we don't need to use, I'll use a terrible term, virgin territory to build to attract more businesses. We have lots of unused space available.
Well, we don't have a lot of empty commercial space.
Okay.
And the challenge here is that there's no great program that solves that issue. And for example, Louise Tremblay's store, the former hardware store, it's really a cool building. When I first saw it, I'm like, that's pretty interesting. You know, it kind of like sets the feel of Vinyl Square, and like, how could we really turn this into something that's really, you know, a cool thing. And but there's no great program that helps that private property owner not modernize, but, you know, create that business attraction of the building. You know, there's sign and facade, but there's always limitations. And I think sometimes in my previous work, you know, we created a makerspace and we had sign and facade program, but the CDBG money is really useful in those terms when you want to help that property owner with some upgrades that make it more appealing for small businesses and help make those accommodations for, you know, current demand. So I you know, I don't really have a great answer to you for your question, but I think we can make those accommodations. I've started to reach out to Mass Development. My previous work, I talk to them constantly. And in this area of Chelmsford, it's just not as connected in the work that I'm used to. So I'm starting to bring them back in. I contacted them recently, spurred by a discussion with the Vinyl Square Committee, and Mass Development's very interested to come and talk with me about the program opportunities to rejuvenate public spaces in Vinyl Square, which we know will then encourage private investment. If we can, you know, infuse some energy and excitement. And I'm not saying modernize, but I'm saying a refresh in public spaces. That's how it began.
Thank you.
All right. Lisa, maybe you can put some of your thoughts on paper, a couple bullet points, you know, 1 page long or something, get over to Evan and he can get it out to us so we all have it. And, you know, nothing earth shattering, just quick bullet points, and that might help us when we get into this recommendation section. Evan, you got anything further?
Yeah, I'll keep it short because I know we're 2 hours in. I'm going to kind of quick fire some of these things. So, you know, I've been around long enough to have learned the lesson that we cannot be complacent when it comes to economic development. I think we found ourselves kind of being complacent, falling asleep at the wheel. And what I mean by that is, if the town is truly committed to economic development, and let's just isolate 129 as the example, this master plan needs, if it's the case, this master plan needs to make that crystal clear that it's all hands on deck, it's all tools in the toolbox, and it's at all cost based upon existing zoning or new zoning. The reason I say that is that, you know, we've talked about the overlays being under attack publicly. Most of those overlays have only really produced multifamily housing. But as some of you know, the overlay also contemplates, to Bill's question, the overlay contemplates scraping existing buildings and building taller and bigger buildings to provide the market opportunity as the market sees fit. So, you know, a couple of years ago, the Board of Selectmen prioritized economic development and then created Lisa's position. The last couple of years, I think that economic development hasn't necessarily been in the forefront of public discussion. I think this is an opportunity for the town to determine or reaffirm its commitment to at least 129 and the zoning strategy and the vision, particularly the one that Lisa's laid out. The other items is, you have to acknowledge you're in a competition. Every town along Route 3 and 495 is competing with Chelmsford.
Mm-hmm.
So that competition then immediately becomes, and this is kind of a term that came up, I think, Tuesday's select board workshop session, and Ken alluded to it this beginning of the meeting. I refer to it as getting the house in order, meaning what Ken referred to, if a business comes to town and the zoning doesn't really allow it, or the zoning allows it, but we have preferences, in my opinion, this master plan, again, needs to reaffirm the commitment so that we have kind of a ground, rules of engagement or pre-identified actions that are taking place, so that we're all moving in the same path and in an agreement, so that when what if scenarios walk through the door, we're not stumbling. And again, I refer to that as just getting the house in order. And I think what came out of Tuesday's select board's work session was the notion of having the chairs meet a couple times a year, maybe having some department heads engage with those chair meetings. So that may be a recommendation that's wrapped into master planning. My fourth high-level comment is housing still plays a critical role in economic development. And back to 129, it's very likely that remaining 3-4 large buildings that make up most of that 600 to 800 square feet, it's critical for the town to keep the housing option available. You can't take it off the table for 129. Maybe in other parts of town, but on 129, if you pull that rug out and you don't allow those large office buildings to be converted to residential, they may never find a tenant in a timely manner. So again, to me, that's all part of, how committed is the town truly to 129. Other small items, just quickly, TIFs, the current master plan has a sentence in there that says the town uses TIFs in a strategic manner. I can tell you that in EDC meetings over the years, EDC's talked about the notion of the town creating a proactive TIF strategy or policy document. I would encourage that. I support that. Redevelopment is the key to the town's economic development, land use, and zoning strategy. That's why the overlays exist. They facilitate and encourage redevelopment. Tonight we've talked about the creative economy. I think that's a term that's not in the 2010 master plan. Lisa talked about the creative food economy. Crowdsource funding. Lisa alluded to it, but she didn't use the term. I think it's the Mass Development Patronicity Program. So I think crowdsource funding is something that we should insert in the master plan. I think Ken's been trying to work on some COVID brainstorming crowdsource funding programs to assist businesses. Community co-ops is something that I think we should put in there. We've always heard the community talk about they want the bakery, they want the farm, the fresh produce. Maybe community co-ops is the way to go. There's enough talented people in Chelmsford who could maybe work on an ad hoc level to further study community co-ops. There's the Route 3 highway interchange study. I'll just throw that out there. I'll work with Jay and Beverly on the issues and opportunities moving forward. But I had talked to the committee previously about, and it's not just 129. I think we have all hands on deck there, but Drum Hill, Chelmsford Street, highway interchanges, the Route 3. Can't get complacent. Those retail shopping districts are not going to look the same 10 years from now. And that's why I think when we talked about the warehouse distribution, the e-commerce, the dark stores, to me, we gotta be ahead of the curve, get those zoning uses in the table so that if and when a Walmart, Kohl's, they start changing their business plan, again, we're not caught like we were with Kronos. We got to be ahead of the curve on this stuff. Lisa talked about the commercial facade and signage program. Currently, that's a CPC funded program, so it's only eligible to the two centers, the two historic centers. But maybe there's an opportunity to figure out, how to expand commercial facade programs to non-historic locations. Lisa neglected to mention the Phase 2 Camoin study, Route 129 study. I'll work with her offline and we'll circle that information back to NIMCOG and the committee. Final item, and Jay alluded to this, I think the master plan needs to recognize that the wastewater is a regional issue. And, another section of the master plan, the 2010 master plan, it does talk about regional initiatives or regional issues, particularly with open space, housing. I think it's important for the master plan to acknowledge that wastewater is a regional issue because it's going to be a major strategic option for Chelmsford to address its wastewater needs moving forward into the future. So those are the ones I had at just a quick shotgun approach at this point. But I wanted to get those high-level messages across. I think it's critical for this committee and this master plan to make a stance, particularly 129, moving forward for the next 10 years. And as much as we think we can predict the outcomes of COVID, there's really no prediction. I mean, we could easily say that we're going to capitalize because the companies are going to move to a suburban location for safety and space. But you can open the Globe every day. The Boston real estate economy continues unconstrained. So that's why I say we can't be complacent. I think the strength of Chelmsford for 129 is we never put all our eggs in one basket. We were trying to be everything to everybody, and that has worked pretty well for us. But I think the lesson learned is we can't pigeonhole ourselves for 129. We can't afford to, assuming that the town still views that 6 million square feet as the bread and butter of the CIP. That's all I have to say.
And Evan, if I could just piggyback on the one topic you said, when we created Lisa's position and got 129 going, before we hired her, some of the research we did in talking with other towns who had successfully, built out and built up a business center out of, not a lot, not vacant land or depressed properties. We were told, 8 years was the forecast. And, in our mind, or at least in my mind, I was more and Lisa knows, I check in with her once every couple of weeks, stop in, what's the update, what do you need help with? And then I move on. Not to say the focus is off of her, but, it is a long-term marathon to get to that 8-year mark of turning 129 around. And, you kind of excited me in your speech. I'm like, you know what, you're right. It is all hands on deck. And now, as an opportunity, you've seen, I know when I do case studies for business and we look at companies when they really, when the economy is bad and when times are tough and someone starts a new business, it's always when you see some of these great companies come out of this trying times. And I think that's the same opportunity in Chelmsford. Now's a great time for us to really work on the core piece and get a great base out of 129 and springboard from there. So I think you were spot on. We haven't forgotten Lisa at all. And I think it's a great time for us to, just make sure that she knows we're there for her and do whatever we can to help that area flourish.
Yeah, no, I don't question, the board's commitment or your commitment.
I didn't take it that way.
No, I understood. I think it's, if in fact the Board of Selectmen, one of their goals is those chair meetings, kind of department chair head meetings to talk about high level issues. To me, that again, that's getting the house in order. And I think all of the ingredients for success are in place. The proper zoning's in place for 129. Lisa's efforts are successful. The developers and the businesses know that we exist. My concern has always been and remains, if the big fish walks in the door and it's not well received, or we need to do some accommodating, the businesses, as we've learned, are moving much quicker than we are. And so the notion, I don't think we're totally there yet where we're fully 100% committed. And the zoning is a good example. It's, for lack of a better word, it's under attack. And if that goes, well, then the whole strategy begins to fall apart, because without the zoning in place, there's nothing to really talk about other than, re-tenanting office buildings. So I think all of the success from the 2010 master plan, and that committee was very visionary, and we've implemented much of it and gone beyond implementation with Lisa's position and so forth. We're right there. And if the economy post-COVID breaks properly for us, we just need to embrace that opportunity. And like I said, my concern is that I think the community is teetering, and likely questioning what's going on at this point. So I think the master plan is the opportunity to recommit and reaffirm for the next 10 years.
Okay. Well, I do agree with, board chairmans, whether it's Planning Board, Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission, Board of Selectmen. Meet with, department heads periodically, whether it's twice a year or 3 times a year, just to get the updates, because then they can report back to their boards. I think it's very valuable. And then, we're all separate boards, but yet we all have the same goal, and that's for the betterment of Chelmsford. So, I think if we all work together, we can get through these things faster and better. I know that there was a project in town, I forget which one it was, but we started to do it on the planning board, and that was we had the chair sit in at some of the preliminary hearings as an observer when they came in to see you and building inspector and that type of thing, and just to be an observer. And by doing that, when it came time to come before the planning board, the chairman had good insight of the project prior to, so it helped navigate through the process a lot faster. That was Ann McGuigan. I'm sure you remember Ann. Anyway, so Evan, maybe get those bullet points with Lisa and you, and then get together with Jay and do what we did like on the last section, just get some recommendations down. And if any
We'll
of the
continue to work offline with them.
if any of the board members have recommendations, email them over to Evan, and he'll incorporate them, and we could talk about them again. Thank you, Lisa, for coming. Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda, I'm going to skip down to the minutes. We have July 16th minutes, and I have Bill, Nancy, Scott, and myself can vote on them. Ken, you weren't at the meeting. I think Mike has stepped out. So can I get a motion from someone for approving of the July 16th minutes?
I move that we approve the July 16th minutes.
I have a motion by Nancy. Do I have a second?
Second by Scott.
Scott seconds. Roll call. Nancy, yes or no?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Ken, you gonna abstain?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. So 4-0, 1 abstention. Beverly, any last comments? No?
Sorry, I'm muted. No, if people have comments on the land use section, if you can get them to Evan so he can pass them along to me, that would be helpful. And I will take a crack at doing some revisions with some collaboration with Evan for the next meeting and have that ready for you.
Jay, you all set?
All set. Thank you.
Justin, thank you. Fred, thank you. Lisa, thank you. Evan, thank you. Take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Before you leave, George, we got just a schedule moving forward.
Okay.
The next regularly scheduled meeting is October 8th. So for Nan's purposes, Center Village will meet at 6. They likely should end by 7. That is a non-NIMCOG meeting. So I think I will, George, I saw you emailed facilities.
Yeah.
Maybe they could have something for us by the 8th. In addition to facilities, I could polish up the historic based upon Deb's comments from last meeting.
How about if we just stay with what we just did, get your comments and Lisa's comments and any edits by Jay, and then we stay on it. And then if we have any recommendations, then we get it over to Jay for let's stay on that economic development section. And let's keep pushing at it and get that done. Because to me, land use is just about done now. This one, and we'll push on those, and we can check with facilities. And I think by doing that, the economic development section, the board can have conversations and discuss what we feel, and then get those edits over to Jay. I don't know. What's the feeling of the rest of the board? I think you want to stay with it.
George, I'd like to stay with it, but
I'm
there were
sorry.
lots of sections where we said that we had a recommendation from 2010, and we've done that. it would be good if we could kind of spin that around to say, this is exactly what we did and how it's enhanced the community. It's like free advertising our accomplishments as opposed to saying, yeah, we just did this, and delete the paragraph.
So.
But I don't know who can massage that and turn it into a positive accomplishment.
We can work on that.
We can work on it. Yeah, I think we can work on some of that.
Yeah.
You know, basically, you're saying, look at the 2010 recommendation and what we feel where we are or should be going with it.
What we accomplished.
Okay.
These were the recommendations, and this is what we've done. The community's moving forward. It's reaffirming our commitment that we're making do this, to Evan's point.
Okay.
Well, Evan provided a lot of that information in the different areas in terms of the stuff that was built and what went forward. So I think you can build on that and have something there.
Okay.
And then the second meeting in October is the 22nd. That's likely going to be the second night of town meeting.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Okay. So do you want to schedule a second meeting in October, or are we going to the first meeting in November?
Yeah, because after that, then it's Thanksgiving, isn't it?
Your first meeting in November is the 12th. Your second meeting would be the 26th, which is
Thanksgiving.
Right.
So I think town meeting will go 2 nights.
No question.
So
29th work?
29th would work for me.
Works for me.
Works for Scott, Bill.
29th is fine.
Ann?
I don't know of any reason why not.
Okay. All right, let's do the 29th. Okay, that gives us some time in between too to get some thoughts.
Oh, wait, is that a FinCom meeting?
That will be after town meeting. So what would they be talking about right after town meeting?
Okay, never mind. Don't worry about it.
Okay, we forgot about it.
Oh, this is October 29th.
Yes.
Oh, crap, that's almost Halloween.
Don't worry, you can wear your costume.
Thanks a lot. I'll bring my black cat too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Nan, September is almost done.
I get that.
All right, so I got a motion to adjourn by Ken, I believe.
I'll second.
Kevin, you had something else? Okay, I got a second by Nan. All those in favor, Ken,
Aye.
Nancy,
Yeah.
Scott,
Aye.
Bill,
All right,
George, aye. Thank you. Have a good night.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.